loving me, I loving you. Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for life, won't live in the past. All I wanna do now is making it last.
This is Making It Last podcast. I'm your host, Noreen Daly, and this time around, I'm going to be talking to a couple. And what I'm loving about this conversation that's about to happen is that I've only spoken to Christina once, and I'm yet to meet them in person, but yet they're willing to stay where they are in the US and do this, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Christina and Javier.
Our pleasure.
Okay. And I'm go ahead.
Yes, we are happy to hear. We're grateful to spending this time with you today.
Thank you so much. Now, I want you to pronounce your last name because I did Spanish a lot of years ago, and I really don't want to mess your surname up. So say your last name for me, please.
Yeah, last name is Llerena.
There you go. Llerena. Okay. I'm sure I'll get it, but by the time the conversation is over. So we're about to talk about, we're going to talk about how can you heal your marriage before it begins. But before we get into that, just briefly tell my listeners a little bit about you and your ministry, so they have a context in terms of why I thought that you're able to speak about this topic.
Sure, Noreen. So Javier and I have been doing marriage preparation retreats for over 15 years, and we've had the honor and pleasure of serving more than 1,000 couples. And from that experience of serving and, really also facing our own ups and downs, our peaks and valleys in our marriage, we have committed we decided to write a book. And that book is entitled Boundless Love, the same name as our nonprofit ministry. And the subtitle is Healing Your Marriage Before It Begins. And it really was born out of our breakdown, which led to breakthrough, pivotal moment in our own marriage.
Okay.
And that pain point really was the catalyst for us to surrender to God and to lean on our faith.
Okay. Are you adding anything to that?
Yes, and our main mission is to bring God in the center of everyone's relationship. It can be single, it can be married, it can be engaged.
Okay. All right. So now that we've somewhat set the context and given people an idea in terms of why I think that it is something that both of you are competent in terms of dealing with, how then can one heal their marriage before it even begins?
Well, I think, we go through a whole process. We have about 12 chapters in our book. So there's many pieces, right, to the puzzle. But I'll say this, that one of the things we focus on, at least as a foundational principle, is healing your childhood wounds. And one of the key pieces of really being marriage ready is being able to face those demons and look at potentially what influences you and perhaps negative choices or behavioral patterns that may stop you from communicating in a healthy manner and being proactive and also leaning on your faith in partnership with your spouse.
I noticed you said healing your childhood wounds. Is it possible, though, that sometimes even some of the experiences that you would interpret from your childhood as being positive can still then impact on your marriage?
Absolutely. I think for us, we realized that myself, I speak for myself, I thought that I was healed from my past childhood, and I thought that I had a pretty good teenage years, but I didn't realize that the narrative that I was playing in my head
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really supporting and building a foundation to have a strong marriage.
Mm. Hmm. Okay. Okay. You do know though, before either one of you probably mention another one, it is not so easy for people to face their past, because whether positive or negative, but there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, they will just suppress all of that. So for both of you, how was that possible?
Well, I agree with you, Noreen. It is. It's like it's extreme. It can be extremely painful, and something that people spend their lifetime avoiding, right? Not going there. But we felt we were forced to. We felt, our circumstances, because the fact that we really hit a point where we were thinking we needed to separate and perhaps divorce. And when we hit that bottom point in our marriage, not only did we realize, well, that's not the future we wanted for ourselves or our two daughters, but ultimately we had to take individual and collective responsibility for the conflict that we were having. And that was forced because it was either make it or break it, right, kind of moment. And within that, we had to look at, okay, well, why am I getting triggered here? Why am I expecting this from you but not communicating it? Why am I, identifying as a victim and not as a partner in this relationship, right? Why am I not speaking up for myself? These kind of behaviors that are patterns were trapping us, really.
And for me to add, by writing the book, I went back to therapy because there was a lot of the deeper you go into the book, and obviously we want to make the book, we want to add as much value and personal testimony as we can, and by doing that, we need to describe the scenario, we need to describe the experience from feelings and also visually as well. So for myself, it triggered going back to therapy to really, what I have noticed is we have a narrative that people tell us that's what happened. And I think we need to really go back and say, no, this is the narrative that happened, even though it's painful. Make peace with it. You can use different approaches that therapists have. Make peace with it and really say, no, this is what happened. But obviously some people told you a different story. In my family, their principle of looking into the past is to forget about it. My dad said, you forget about it. You don't even think about it. Just forget about it. And I think I understood that I needed to just bury the past, bury the feelings. And what you don't realize is those feelings are brewing. They're like weeds, right? They're going to grow.
That's true.
Back, and that's what happened to me.
Don't you think?
Yeah. So it wasn't always that we were willing, Maureen. We felt forced.
Okay. I know you've been enjoying the conversation, but we're going to take a little break and get a word from our sponsor. So, the whole idea of a branding strategy sounded so exotic and so fancy to me. But after having several conversations with Neon, I now have a clearer understanding. I am sure of what my identity is, what it is that I want people to see Noreen Daly as. Thanks, Neon. Thanks, Splint. Do you think though that it will take somebody who, okay, you have to be at a particular point to be able to be open, that you can be vulnerable enough to deal with what could prove to be painful? So is it something that you would say that it is not something just get up and say, okay, I'm going to face and try to heal from my child? Or do you think it is a process and people have to wait until they actually have that mindset to be open to being so vulnerable and reliving maybe some of these painful moments so that they can actually heal?
Yes, I think for me, it was I needed to hit bottom.
Okay.
For other individuals, I think for other individuals that we mentor and we have done retreats, is the hunger to really say, I really want to make my marriage as stronger as ever. I really want to have God in the center of our relationship. So for us, we felt called to write our testimony. So other couples out there don't have to go through the pain that we went through. So at least we can open their minds to say, you know what, I need to evaluate where I'm at and what happened in the past. And I think we are given an invitation of reflecting where you are. So you don't move forward to what happened to us because obviously that destroys family, trust. I think it will push some men away from the faith. So there's different elements that we wanted to really share. And also the key point for us is God's love, and that's why it's called Boundless Love. Because I think when we truly completely understand 100% what God's love is for us, I think that conquers anything in life. When we start accepting God's love, it gives us such a strength to really overcome anything in life.
And I just wanted to add really quickly, one of the things that we also are really committed to is just being open and real and transparent about marriage. I think one of the things, at least, I grew up thinking is, more of what is on in the surface. And I mean, it's a private affair. Like we never know what's going on between two people, but
true.
we are open to demystifying that kind of fantasy for folks, because I think it's a real, 5-dimensional relationship. I think when we're asked, well, how did you heal? I think we really, the healing happened through the Holy Spirit. It wasn't about us being remarkable or special individuals. It was about our faith doing the work. And I think that's why we were so humbled and felt so moved to write, to share that, because we know we would not be together if we did not lean in to that faith.
Okay. I noticed you said initially that and there's no way you can tell us everything that's in the book. But, tell us some of the, yeah, because if you did that, why then would we want the book? But I'm hoping that I will, find a way to get the book. But I noticed one of the very first things you said, which we've been talking about just now, is the whole of healing your childhood wounds. But what are some of the other ways that we can actually heal a marriage before it begins?
Well, I think one of the things also that's really important is we talk a lot about boundaries. That's something that I think is sort of basic, but often overlooked in marriage. You're coming from, we're a bicultural marriage. Javier's from Spain. I'm from the U.S. We do speak both English and Spanish, but we had very different childhoods. We're from very different families. Yes, we were both raised in the faith, but, even our extended family members are not in the faith. So, we really had to come to one another, seeing our differences and respecting our differences, and also not allowing our differences to separate us, right, or create a divide, right? So I think boundaries are really important to figure out where do you as an individual begin and end, and also in your marriage as you forge out your relationship. Are you individuated from your family? How much of your family values do you want to emulate in your family? And are you choosing this or just repeating it? And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's healthy and it's, no big deal, but sometimes it isn't healthy. And maybe we want to really look at what kind of partnership or what kind of dynamic we want to, hold up. And especially when you're raising kids, you want to be really clear around that. What do you want to teach your child by example? So I think boundaries are important to really start identifying not only what is your partnership about, as well as what it's not.
And we also talk about, obviously, we all childs of God. We talk about, from a man's perspective, I talk about the effect of pornography that I think affects all the men, and how we are getting a sense of what we should be doing, which is the opposite, right? Because we're so influenced culturally, we're so influenced by pornography. We also emphasize how to be pioneers in your marriage and really design, envision what do you want to do together in terms of where you're heading as your marriage, right? There's so much out there. We also emphasize how important it is to get involved in any type of ministry and serve as a lay person in your church to really connect with other couples that are in the same mindset as you are. So there's specific topics that we talk about. We obviously start from the beginning as us individuals, our childhood, and then we kind of take the reader into a journey of elements that we think it will definitely make your marriage stronger. I also want to emphasize that the book is for, we thought originally was going to serve singles, but we see more people that are married buying the book than people that are about to get married. So there's some elements
for everyone.
I think there's a lot of elements there for everyone.
Okay. So both of you said a lot, but if there's somebody listening and they're saying, I'm still wondering how all of this will make sense. I'm saying it as if I'm that person, still being cynical, still being skeptical. If you then, either of you or both of you, had to describe this as a 3-step process, what would that 3-step process be?
Well, I think the first step is forgiveness of self and your spouse, right? Or your past, whatever it is, but making peace with where you are right now.
Okay.
Right? And then I think that's the first step. So, if you truly want to create something beautiful in your marriage, you want to make sure you're coming at it whenever you're in it. It could be throughout or ahead of time or just starting. You want to have a clean heart, right? So the first piece would be forgiveness. Okay. Then the second piece, I would say, is like, a vision around what is it that you want? What do you believe? What are your values? What do you hold as sacred, right, in your life? What kind of, reality do you want to participate in? And because we're not bystanders, right? We clearly have choices that we can make. So that would be the second piece, right, is how do you want, Javier used the word design, vision, all of that, right? And then intend even. And then thirdly, I think it's prayer. I think it's around surrendering to God or whatever your faith is, the Creator, and saying, holding that up and say, use me and show me and guide me, Lord. And this is where I'm at. I'm at your service. And I know that you're bigger than me and you'll steer the ship.
Yeah.
And to add to the first step of forgiveness, we also emphasize that we are not, for example, I am an orphan, but that that's not the label. That's not who I am, right? What I know is that I am a child of God, and only God can label you. So when we're talking about forgiveness, is really forgiving yourself, even if you're going through addiction, or you're an addict, or you had any type of problems. For example, in the book, I talk about angry management as being one of my demons. That doesn't label you. You need to forgive yourself and accept that you're a child of God, and only God can label you. When you start forgiving yourself, I think you open up your heart to really go through that healing process, right? So forgiveness is forgiving yourself first, and then forgiving everyone that they hurt you in the past, or they're hurting you right now. So that process of really taking the labels out, I think I see a lot of men out there carrying a label in their backs, and it's so heavy, and they need to take it out. They need to accept God's love and really know that they're a treasure. They're amazing men out there, and they need to forgive themselves for the wrong that they've done in the past, and look forward to what God has for them.
What is obvious from what is happening is that I will definitely have to have both of you again talking some more about this book, because I believe based on what you've been saying, we've barely scratched the surface
Yes.
of what, of all of what. But I believe, though, that based on what you've said, that my listeners would have gotten an answer to the question, how can you heal your marriage even before it begins? Thanks so much, Christina and Javier, for taking the time.
Our pleasure.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. This was Making It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, with other people. I'm Noreen Daly. Until next time.
Making it last is all I care to do. You loving me, I loving you. Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for life, won't live in the past. All I wanna do now is making it last.